for the opportunity to give sponsored testimony on House Bill 61. The goal of this bill is to preserve the integrity of school sports, to ensure that young women are not made to compete against someone who is a biological male. In most instances, when young women are forced to compete against young men in athletic competition, it places them at a fundamental disadvantage, a disadvantage that threatens the athletic achievement and even college scholarship prospects. I believe that allowing biological males to compete on women's teams is a violation of Title IX. Biological females should have equal opportunity to compete athletically. This means female competition should be protected and preserved. Biological males should not be permitted to encroach upon this equal athletic opportunity. Allowing this encroachment vanquishes the spirit of Title IX. My daughters, they work extremely hard to compete on their sports teams. If they would be forced to compete against a biological male who is faster, stronger, and has more endurance than they do, I would be furious. My view of this matter is shaped by my role as a husband, father of 2 daughters in a public school who play sports, and an uncle of nieces, and informed by what I know to be true of man and woman. It is my desire to protect fair competition by promoting a level playing field in Ohio's interscholastic athletics. I think this bill shows compassion for all and is aligned with what we know to be scientifically true. We only wish to protect something that is worth fighting for, female athletic opportunity. Chair Manning, Vice Chair Byrd, Ranking Member Robinson, and members of the House Primary and Secondary Education Committee, thank you again for the opportunity to testify.
Chairman Mehring, Vice Chair Byrd, Ranking Member Robinson, and members of the House Primary and Secondary Education Committee, thank you for the opportunity to present sponsored testimony on House Bill 61, the Save Women Sports Act. The Save Women Sports Act is a fairness issue for women to be able to achieve their dreams in athletics in our state. And it is crucial to preserving women's rights and the integrity of women's and girls' sports. Across our country, female athletes are currently losing championships, scholarship opportunities, medals, education and training opportunities, and more to discriminatory policies that allow biological males to compete in girls' sports. While I could share dozens of examples with you, one example is that in Connecticut. 9 different girls used to hold the 15 women's state championship titles. Those titles are all held by now 2 different biological males. All these girls are asking for is a fair shot and to be given the chance to play and win by the rules in the sports that they love. That opportunity is being ripped away from them by biological males. The Save Women Sports Act will require schools that are part of the Ohio High School Athletic Association to designate separate teams for participants of the biological female sex. No school, interscholastic conference, or organization that regulates interscholastic athletics shall permit biological males to participate on an athletic team or in an athletic competition designated only for biological female participants. Currently, the OSHAA allows biological males to compete against biological females if they currently, 1, complete a year of hormone therapy, or 2, demonstrate that they do not possess physical or physiological advantages over biological females. Unfortunately, these policies have been enacted in other states and resulted in biological males winning in girls' sports. These policies are obviously not the solution to this problem, and girls in our state need further protection. In addition, for the few individuals who are born intersex, their ability to compete will not be hindered in any way by this bill. We want everyone in the state of Ohio to be able to compete. The beauty of this bill is that we are including everyone in sports and upholding the integrity of women's sports. The reason we have women's sports divisions is because biological males will always have physiological and biological advantages over females. Biological males possess many physiological advantages over females, including greater lung capacity, larger hearts, higher red blood cell counts, stronger tendons and ligaments, greater muscle strength, and increased bone density. Because of this, Title IX was a federal law enacted precisely for the purpose of ensuring equal opportunity for women and girls to compete in interscholastic sports. Discriminatory policies violate Title IX and deny girls educational and athletic opportunities. Allowing biological males to compete against biological females is a discriminatory policy that turns back the clock over a half century on advances that we have made for women. I'm passionate about this issue because we cannot allow little girls' dreams of being a gold medal athlete to be crushed by biological males stealing their opportunities. The Save Women's Sports Act is a fairness issue for women. This bill ensures that every little girl who works hard to make it on the podium is not robbed of that opportunity by a biological male competing against her in a biological female sport. We want every little girl to achieve her athletic dream here in the state of Ohio. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Who in Ohio brought you this bill?
Thank you, from the chairman to the representative. You know, we're here on behalf of every little girl and families and individuals in our state. You know, there are many girls that are now looking at athletics and saying, I thought that if I worked hard enough, then I could compete on a level playing field to end up on the gold podium. But unfortunately, when little girls are not only looking in our state, but around the United States, they're seeing that this might not be an opportunity for them any longer. So we're here on behalf of every little girl in our state and families who want to fight for girls to achieve their athletic dream.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My concern is that what we've negated is that there are transgenders. And when you continue to say biological, which I think you repeated about 10 times in your presentation here, that disallows that participation. I do believe, Representative Stolfutz, when you talk about not being able to compete because of strength, et cetera, that not every boy can beat some girls. So there are some issues that are just not true when it comes. And my concern is that, have you discussed with the NC2A or any other athletic organization, because this gets us beyond, this gets us to our higher ed institutions also. Have you had that discussion with them about their concerns or what their thoughts are about a bill such as yours, which unfortunately are popping up all over the country for whatever reason? Have you had that discussion here in Ohio with any of those higher educational institutions?
Chairman, Representative, I personally have not had that conversation with higher ed. I have talked to a few superintendents and the former director of OHSAA and addressed this issue with him. This issue, it's about fairness. It's about, it's really simple. I mean, it's biological males competing against females, biological females, and it's just not fair. We have the NBA, we have the WNBA. I don't think I need to explain to anybody here why we have both. I think it's pretty clear. We have different divisions in high school sports. You know, if a high school has 5,000 students and another high school has 500, we don't make their football teams play one another. That's not fair. We have different weight classes in wrestling. We wouldn't make a 240-pound kid wrestle a 110-pound kid. That wouldn't be fair. That kid would get crushed. He would get injured. So this is what this bill is about. It's about creating a fair playing field for females. Thank you.
Representative Sabecki.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for providing your testimony today in your bill. I was looking through the bill analysis here under the verification of a participant's sex, and it states that the participant's internal, external reproductive autonomy, the participant's normal immunology produced levels of testosterone, and the analysis of the participant's genetic makeup. So here's my question for you. How does this respect the privacy between the doctor and the patient?
Chairman, Representative, thank you for the question. So we have a sub-bill drafted. It's in my folder here, and I hope to accept it on the next hearing we get. But that sub-bill, let me read exactly what it does here. The sub-bill, we have taken out the medical examination for verification. So there is no exam in the substitute bill. There is no invasion of privacy. There's nothing that the student has to prove to anybody. So we've taken that all out in the sub-bill, which we hope to accept on our next hearing. Thank you.
Continue.
Well, since we're talking about this bill, we don't have the sub-bill, we've not put that in, though, because, based on the legislation we have before us today, would you believe that a child should be subject to this invasive medical exam and testing of sports, which is not currently happening?
To the chair, to the representative. No, that's why we have the sub-bill, because we believe that it is invasive, and we have removed it in the sub-bill. So again, I know that what you had before you is the original bill, and we have a substitute bill drafted to take out that language, which I hope we can accept the next go-round.
Representative Click.
Thank you, Chairman. Through the chairman to the witnesses. I'm just curious, do you have any statistics or numbers on the percentage of transgendered individuals statistically within our state or in general? And do you feel like, in light of Title IX, do you feel like your bill creates more or less equality, and why?
Yeah, so, I don't have that, from the chairman to the representative, I don't have that number exactly in front of me right away. But what this bill specifically does is it allows everyone to compete in the state of Ohio. What it specifically does, though, is protect the integrity of women's sports in our state. So to be very clear to the committee, as we addressed in our testimony, everyone still has the ability to compete in our state. We want every child to compete. We're just protecting the integrity of women's sports. And as you're questioning with Title IX, this absolutely strengthens Title IX. It strengthens women's rights in our state because we know women have the ability to compete, but there are physiological and biological differences between males and females that make males be able to compete on a different playing field than females. So this protects the integrity of women's sports and still allows everyone to compete.
Ranking Member Robinson.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Through the chair to the representatives, good seeing you again. Thank you for your testimony. A couple of things I think have changed a little bit since the last time you brought this bill up. I believe there was a bill in Idaho that passed similar to this, but has been blocked by a federal judge, potentially for being unconstitutional. And then also, I believe recently President Biden's administration, after a Supreme Court case in Boston, stated that actually transgender students would fall under discrimination policies under Title IX, potentially shaping up for it to be unconstitutional. So my question is, in light of that, is it potentially possible that this bill could be found unconstitutional?
To the chair, to the representative. Your question was, could this bill be found unconstitutional?
Based on the Biden administration stating that they find it protected under discrimination clause in Title IX, and then also the bill being blocked that was passed in Idaho.
To the chair, to the representative. Any bill we pass here could be found unconstitutional. I mean, it's going to go to the courts, I'm sure, and a judge is going to rule on it. So that doesn't mean we stop fighting, for women's rights. We continue the fight. So, that's my answer to you. Thank you for the question.
I'll also add real quick. So, there are states all across the nation that understand there's problems with Biden's executive order in allowing biological males to compete against females. We've seen it pass in Idaho. It's currently waiting to be signed into law in Alabama and Montana. It's pending in Arizona, Connecticut, Missouri, North Dakota, New Hampshire, Kentucky, Utah, Georgia, Kansas, Texas, Florida, Maine, Hawaii, Iowa, New Jersey, West Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Oklahoma. There are legislators all across the nation that understand that we have to protect the integrity of women's sports. It's very heartbreaking to see that young girls are going to be stripped of female opportunity, athletic opportunities, college scholarships, because biological males could compete against them. And so I think we're seeing all around the nation that there are issues with biological males competing with female-only sports, specifically under Title IX.
Follow-up.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that answer. So I think in the last 6 years in Ohio, we've had about 11 transgender girls competing that have been approved by the Ohio Association out of 1 million athletes. So I guess the question is this something that's happening in Ohio that's driving this bill? And then also the NCAA has come out against these bans. How do you square that with this legislation?
To the chairman, to the representative, 11, I believe, is the correct number. That's the number I had as well. So we can look at that, one of two ways. We can look at that as we've given rights to 11 biological males to play on female sports teams, or we've stripped the rights of hundreds or thousands of biological females who now have to compete with biological males. So it's whatever way you want to look at it. My view of it is we've stripped the rights of biological females and we've forced them to compete against somebody who is stronger, faster, has more endurance than them.
Vice Chair Byrd.
Thank you, Chair. As you probably are aware, Arkansas has passed and 15 other states are considering a law to prohibit hormone and surgery to those who would request it on this issue until that individual reaches a certain age. If Ohio were to pass such a law, how would that affect your bill?
From the chairman to the representative, I would say that's a very different piece of legislation than what we're specifically discussing here. We want every little girl to be able to compete. There definitely would be some issues with that if that were to be signed into law and that issue were arisen in the state. Because when we look at the OSHAA guidelines, it would be hard to then fall under the guidelines in which they would like us to do. But I would say that's a different piece of legislation that I think we would need to discuss at a different time.
Follow-up?
No.
Representative Ingram.
Chair, two questions, actually. The first one is on the civil action piece. What was your expectation with that? What are you expecting that there could be a civil action against a school district? What does that look like to you?
To the chair, to the representative. So again, in our substitute bill that we have drafted, we've changed the wording in that a little bit. So it addresses a school that knowingly permits a biological male from participating on a female sports team. If they knowingly permit it, they could be held liable for civil action if that is true. So it lists in the bill who could be named in a lawsuit. If a young girl loses an opportunity, she has the cause for suit.
One more question.
Would be to the school district? Okay. I guess maybe my concern too is participation versus competition. What would be the opportunity for those transgender girls to be able to participate and maybe not that whole competition piece that you are concerning yourselves with?
From the chairman to the representative, high school, athletics and anything under the OHSAA, it really is one and the same. Whether you're, I think you said participating or competing,
Right.
if someone wants to go as a friend and cheer someone on, I guess that could be participation. But when you're competing, you're on a team, and under the OHSAA, it's very specific guidelines on how that works. And again, I'd like to repeat to this committee, this bill specifically allows everyone the ability to compete in the state of Ohio. We want everyone to have the opportunity. What this bill specifically looks at is ensuring that females have the ability to compete on a level playing field while still including everyone in our state. I think that's truly the beauty of how this bill is crafted and how we've looked at this piece of legislation.
I'm going to ask again, is it possible for me to participate and not compete? And they are not one and the same. Participating means that I could be on the team and you can tell me as if I've been suspended for the week. You can practice, but you can't play. So is participating allowable under the bill?
To the chairman, to the representative, I would say participation would mean that the person would be on the team, so I would say no. Madam Chairman, I deeply apologize. I have got to run. I've got to be somewhere 10 minutes ago. I thank you so much for allowing me to come today. my joint sponsor here will carry on the torch while in my absence.
Thank you, Representative Stokes. Representative Swearinger.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this testimony. My question goes back to the constitutionality of the issue. Isn't it true that the lower court's decision and the administration's guidance on this issue in and of itself could also be unconstitutional?
From the chairman to the representative, absolutely. You know, as I mentioned, there's states around the nation that have continually pushed back. You know, we understand what Title IX is. We understand the rules under Title IX. And, you know, we believe that the Save Women's Sports Act falls under those and protects the integrity of women's sports.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Chair. To the sponsor, Representative, thank you for taking the time. I know you're pretty passionate about this issue. I think there's a lot of people pretty passionate about this issue from a bunch of different aspects. And I had kind of two questions, but I don't need to answer the first one or ask the first one because my esteemed colleague to my right here did a fine job of asking about the transgender, what their role would be and what do they have available to them. But I want to go back to a couple things that I heard. At times you mentioned women's sports, and at times you mentioned little girls, and at times you mentioned scholarships being withheld, and at times you mentioned the ability or inability for these little girls to compete against transgender kids. And, you know, it harkens back to those memories of watching girls progress physically when you're a little boy at 6, 7, 8 years old faster than boys did. And so I watched a lot of little girls whoop up on little boys in sports because they were physically and genetically advanced faster at that particular stage of development. And so that leads to that, and I'll just jump forward to watching the Notre Dame women's basketball team in the rec center whoop on every man, I mean man, that came into that gym, into that rec center to play basketball against them and whooped them. And there's a big difference between a 24-year-old, 22-year-old male and a 22-year-old female when it comes to physical strength and so forth. So I want to go to this question of 11, almost 12 million people here, 11 little girls that are transgender that want to be engaged in the female sport because they identify there. How many of these little girls at 12 or 13 are getting scholarships or having scholarships removed because they just got beat in a wrestling match or they just got beat, which we don't even have as strong of a female wrestling program here in Ohio? How many of them have gotten beat on the court in basketball and Ohio State has come down to that 13-year-old and said, you know what, you just got taken to school by that transgender young student athlete, and so we're going to pull a Ohio State scholarship from you because of that. I'd love to see data that shows that out of these 11 situations, there were actual scholarships pulled. I would love to hear that testimony from somebody because I just don't see it. Thank you, Chair, for giving me some latitude.
From the chairman to the representative. So to begin with, at the time of birth, there's a physiological and biological difference between male and female. And if I may, I'll read it again. So some of the things include, science points to this, that there are physiological advantages over females, male to females, including greater lung capacity, larger hearts, higher red blood cell counts, stronger tendons and ligaments, greater muscle strength, and increased bone density. You know, while there are over 11 million people in our state, you know, as a representative, I represent one. and I represent around 130,000 people, but I want to be the voice of every single little girl in our community. And when we're looking around the nation, we have states like Connecticut, which I also pointed out, and there's other states around the United States that are still having these exact same issues, where biological females used to hold the state championship titles, and now, under the same guidelines that the OSHAA is holding, we now have biological males. And so I will be the voice, and I will continue being the voice, whether it's for one little girl in our community or 100, because every voice matters, and we understand that there's a biological difference between male and female at the time of birth, and that's why we created Title IX, to ensure the integrity of women's sports in our state.
So if I may follow up with the
Follow.
chair. Thank you very much. There is right now Ohio State holders of championships that are transgender in the women's sports. Is that what I heard?
From the chairman to the representative. Across the nation there are, and we're working on this piece of legislation right now so that a little girl's opportunity is not robbed.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Representative Lightbody?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to the representative. I'm concerned about a number of things related to your bill. I have a number of transgender individuals in my district with whom I've spoken, and I'm not sure, even as a former science teacher, that I know how many times an individual at birth has blood type indicating one gender and physiological presentation as the other gender, and the decisions that are made at birth to designate the sex of this individual. I suspect it's not as clear-cut as you think, or as any of us really know, because should that occur, I think families and the doctors keep that very private to themselves, and it's not discussed. My grandmother used to say to me when I was pregnant, I hope your baby is a boy or a girl and has 10 fingers and 10 toes. And at the time, I thought that was sort of an interesting thing to say, but now that I'm older and have a little more understanding of the way genetic reproduction works, that was in fact a very valid wish on her part. I think when men and women, boys and girls, who choose to go through a transgender modification, do so because at their heart, they know that they were designated the wrong gender, the wrong sex. And it's for them that I am speaking now. Do you have any idea how many trans boys and girls in Ohio suffer all kinds of mental anguish over the choices that they feel they must make, and whether their families support them or not? It's a difficult thing. This bill is going to, in my opinion, harm their mental health. And I know you're concerned about the little girls in your district, but we all need to be as concerned about everyone in our districts, and those for whom sex designation is not as clear-cut as we might think it is, may suffer mental anguish over yet again another bill which is going to minimize their decision and not be supportive of their mental health and their ability to present themselves to the world in the gender they know themselves to be. And I'd like to hear what you have to say on that. Thank you.
From the chairman to the representative, my heart goes out to hurting Ohio children. We have many children that are hurting in numerous ways, and my heart goes out to them, and there's nothing more that I want to see than Ohio children thriving. I have very big passion for children in our state. To talk to the intersex issue that you brought up, our bill does address that, and we understand that for a very small portion of children born that there is that issue, and this bill does not include intersex. So that does answer that issue. And then for the third part, we want to see children thrive in our state. But again, we are not excluding anyone in this bill. We're including everyone in the state of Ohio. We are just fighting so that little girls can compete on a level playing field. And I think all of your issues would be addressed then.
Any more questions? Representative Sabecki.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just curious, do you know of any instances in Ohio of transgender athletes participating towards a pro-game problem?
From the chairman to the representative, so through the OHSAA, I believe as Representative Robinson mentioned, there has been 11 transgender students that have competed against females, in our state. As I've mentioned before, around the nation, it's a different playing field that they are competing on. Biological males at the time of birth have different physiological attributes than females. And so this is not a question of how has a biological male ended up on the podium. It's an issue of fairness. This is what we're looking at and saying it is unfair for a biological male to compete against a female. And to be quite frank, I think most Ohioans agree with that. Because I've talked to them, they've called my office. Everyone knows that a biological male at the time of birth possesses different physical attributes than females, which is why we have Title IX and why we're fighting to preserve the integrity of women's sports in our state. And if I may, to the chairman, I think every single person realizes this, that the transgender issue, that's a different issue. We're fighting to protect women's sports in our state. People keep asking about different questions on different bills. Let's talk about those issues in another piece of legislation. How about as women here, we all agree together and say, let's stand up for little girls. Let's stand up and say, you know what, if they want to end up on the gold podium and they fought their entire life to do so, let's not allow a biological male to compete in a female sport and end up on the gold podium. Because in our heart, and it's not just our heart, it's science. Science proves that there's a biological difference at the time of birth. That's why this bill needs to go through, and that's why states around the nation have moved forward this piece of legislation, because they know it's crucial, and they know that they want to stand up and say enough is enough. Little girls deserve to compete on a level playing field.
Follow-up?
Well, I'm glad to hear, Representative, that you support women's opportunity to be able to choose and that you believe in science. But that wasn't my question. I was wondering, have you heard of any instances in Ohio where transgender athletes participating in sports has caused a problem? Of those 11, I mean, you brought this forward, so I'm thinking there might be a problem. So I was wondering, have you heard of any issues in the state of Ohio where there's been an issue?
From the chairman to the representative, I have already answered this question multiple times, but to answer it again, I'll go back to my testimony that the rules on the books allow it so biological males can compete against females. The same rules that are on the books in Ohio are on the books in other states that are allowing biological males to end up on the gold podium over females. Again, in Connecticut, 9 different girls used to hold the 15 women's state championship titles. Those 15 titles are now all held by 2 different biological males. State championship titles means athletic opportunities, scholarships, and a girl achieving her American dream. And so, again, I'd repeat, there are instances across the nation where the same rules that are on the books here have allowed biological males to end up on the gold podium. And I will again and again be the voice for every little girl in our state, because the rules on the books are unfair, and every little girl deserves the opportunity to achieve her athletic dream in our state.
Representative Kaler? Oh, I'm sorry, one more.
Thank you. I didn't know if you're aware of this, but last week, in Connecticut, this case you keep mentioning, it was dismissed by the federal court, so I didn't know if you were aware of that.
From the chairman to the representative, I am aware.
Representative Kaler?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate my colleagues mentioning that this is a new bill, and seems to be a lot of them coming up, and the representative listed a number of states. I don't know how many it was, it sounded like 17 or 20, where this bill is being offered, and it's obviously something that growing up as I competed in sports, I didn't see as an issue, and nobody talked about it. And I guess my question is, because of some of my colleagues' questions, is this bill to fix a problem that's happening, or one that seems to be opening up in the future? So we're being preemptive, because obviously a number of other states are also doing this as a new bill in this time that we're in. So I guess my question is, are we trying to fix something that is happening that's rampant today, or that's something that could happen in the future?
From the chairman to the representative, that's a wonderful question, and I would say both. It's happening not only around the United States right now, but also it's something that will continue happening more.
Representative Kleck, did I see your hand up?
Thank you, Chair, and through the chair to the witness. I believe the number is, across the nation, is less than 1% have gender dysphoria. And as we take a look at this, should we wait until there is a problem when we know that problems are happening in places like Connecticut and so forth, or should we get ahead of the problem? And then finally, we talk about mental health and depression, and I think we should all be concerned about that for anyone, regardless of how they identify themselves. But I think we also have to include the little girls that you mentioned. And so if a young lady loses out on a scholarship or loses out on a gold medal to someone who has a biological advantage over her due to his XY chromosomes, how do you think that affects the mental health of young ladies? Thank you.
From the chairman to the representative. I forgot the first question, to be honest, but we're going to go to the second question. Every little girl deserves to compete on a level playing field, and I've said this time after time, but it actually boggles my mind that we live in a world that's pro-women, empower women, they can achieve the world, and then all of a sudden, we want biological males to compete in female-only sports. It's really mind-boggling to me because we know science proves there's a biological difference. So if in today's society we're so pro-woman and women can do what they want to do and they can achieve their American dream, then why would we try to strip away their athletic opportunity, their female opportunity, their college scholarships by allowing biological males to compete against them? That has to be very difficult for females when that happens, because it's not if it happens, it's when it happens, because it's happened around the United States, and I'm glad you brought up that point.
Thank you, Chairman.
Representative Ingram, one more.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I actually have two things. First of all, I want to say that Title IX was not just about sports. And so we may have to be very clear about what was intended by Title IX. Unfortunately, many people have driven it down to just sports, but that's not what it was all about. That's not why it was there. Second of all, does this mean that the young lady who was a kicker on the varsity football team, will she not be able to participate or compete?
From the chairman to the representative, no, this bill is specifically about protecting the integrity of female-only sports in the state of Ohio.
No, this bill talks about all sports being one sex only.
From the
Does that
chairman,
mean that young lady would not be able to compete on the football field, even as the kicker, who, by the way, made the tackle from the guy who got the ball and stopped him from scoring? Does that mean that she would not be able to compete?
From the chairman to the representative, what you're actually asking is verified in the sub-bill. So we will be sending out the sub-bill. It is in that because we did want to clarify that issue to ensure that everyone understood the intention of our piece of legislation.
And we can get clarification through LSC.
Wonderful, thank you.
Seeing no more questions, thank you, Representative Powell. And this concludes the first hearing of House Bill 61. Seeing no more business before us, committee is adjourned.